All right, here we are. Now we're live. Good morning, Matt. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Mark?
I'm very, very good. It's good. It's good to be able to talk to you a little bit. Before I'll introduce you briefly. I mean, we've been friends since I can't. I don't know. I don't know if it was you I started teaching martial arts, or we met each other at Rocky Peak in the late '80s, or what that was. But we've been in each other's lives for a long, long time, and through the martial arts and through church. And so I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit, what you do, your family, and with no further ado, Matt Moran.
Hey, so yeah, we go back to it's probably 1990-ish or something, and I've mentioned this story walking into Faith Evangelical and seeing was it Kevin? I don't know. He sang a Rich Mullins song. I didn't realize he was in your family for 10 years. I don't know why I didn't make that connection. So we started spending a lot more time together, probably mid 90s to starting 2000s, and trained at your studio. Matt trained at your studio. And yeah, so I've got 4 kids. Matt, Jess, Christopher, and Sarah. You know all of them. Probably Sarah the least. I think we moved when she was pretty young. And yeah, I work in technology, do data analytics. I write music, and have a couple books that I've written on career development for IT professionals.
Yeah, so that's where I remember that's where we got together quite a bit, because I think I'm almost positive back in the early times you helped me with a website for the studio. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I kind of remember that. I remember you working at Rick's place and having your own business off to the side there where you worked, which is a unique story in itself, because I think that I mean, IT is probably where you've been the most, and I'm not sure if you were self-taught, if that's how you did it. You made a business out of being self-taught, kind of an entrepreneur always. Is that where you started as far as IT goes?
Yeah, so in high school, my friend Mike Quinn, he was my best friend in high school. He was taking one of the first computer programming classes they offered in any high school. And he came in and showed me this program he had written on an Apple IIe computer, and just basically said, enter your name, you'd enter it, and it'd blink on the screen. And I thought, well, that's cool. How'd you do that? And he showed me the code. He walked away from it and, just kind of left. And I opened up the book and I started geeking out and just writing code. And the first thing I wrote was a program to keep track of all my books, because I'm a book geek. I've got books everywhere, and my dad was always buying used books, so we had boxes of them, and I'd number the books and put books in there, and I wanted to know where they were. And so I wrote this library database, and that's really how I started. So yeah, I've never taken a computer class. I've taught a few of them, but ultimately got hired by Blue Cross of California. I was doing sales calls. I was selling copiers. Hated it every day. And so it was about 112 degrees in Woodland Hills, and I walked into the Blue Cross headquarters to make a sales call, and I said, oh, the air conditioning's nice, and they had a job for somebody who did data entry, and because I could type 80 words a minute or whatever it was, I got hired. And pretty soon I just started automating things, and about 9-10 months later I was programming for Blue Cross. So
yeah, it's always been something. You've always had kind of like this entrepreneur spirit about you. And your family, you'd mentioned all your kids. I think that I think if you look back, well, you're pretty athletic yourself, and I believe all your children have been super athletic. I mean, let's dive into that, your athleticism family, because they're all pretty unique in themselves. With
yeah,
Matt, the daughter that climbs. Let's talk about the physicality of your family.
sure. Well, I always tell people, I was not a great team athlete growing up. I have a brother who was an amazing soccer player, played for CSUN. It's like on the U.S. national team or something. He was just an amazing player. And he was probably the best athlete I would consider the best natural athlete in our family. He was just really good at a lot of sports. But I was always really good at these individual sports, skateboarding, jumping off thing, whatever it was, climbing. And so from the time my kids were very young, I had them out running around the hills, catching snakes. You've seen the videos, right? We're always doing something stupid.
Yeah.
And then I started coaching soccer, and my oldest son, Matt, he kept getting... He was a good defensive player. He wasn't a super high talent player, not a dribbler, he didn't try and score, but he was an amazing defensive player. And in part of it was because he was just physical, to the point where he'd get penalties a lot. But it wasn't him being cheap, it was just him being aggressive. And what that migrated to, because I'd started playing a little bit of hockey, is, he was actually on a movie set or a film set, whatever, for the X-Files. He was doing extra work, and he was with some kids playing street hockey. He didn't play, but they all played, but he liked it. And he said, I want to play hockey. So we got him into hockey, which turned out to be a great fit for him compared to, because all the crap he was getting penalties for in soccer, he could do in hockey, and it was perfectly okay, right? So anyway, he's always been athletic, and then just all the kids hiked around. So Jessie, people always ask me, because you've seen her, she's a professional climber. She guides and lives up in Oregon. Right now she's in Washington, but she lives in Oregon, but travels around like all these climbers are like the surfers of the 60s and 70s, endless summer, where they just go around to surf. Basically, climbers, they work hard enough to make enough money so they can go to the next climbing spot, live in their cars, and climb like every day, right?
Right.
So you've seen the pictures.
I've seen the pictures of her hanging off the side of cliffs. I'm just like, man, yeah, it's all of them. Chris too. I think Chris was wrestling and stuff like that. And you're right. I didn't know much about Sarah. How was she on the athletic?
So she played roller hockey when she was younger. She was not big on team sports. She was always very athletic, ready to go. And it was, in part, I attribute it to just a lifetime of being out and about. I've lived in Chatsworth since I was 5, or when I lived there. I'm not there now, but and I love Chatsworth. I mean, you've been there a long time. We lived in a house that was, kitty corner from the studio when it used to be Hughes Market. There were no condos there.
That's correct.
There was a big empty field. There was the apartments and then the neighborhood. And everything north was all farms and citrus groves, right? And so we grew up going to Stony Point every day, right? Just always climbing around. So my kids, I think I had Sarah in a front pack carrier when she was 4 years old, and we were climbing up Point Doom at Zuma, and it's just what I've always done. So I think they just got used to running around and climbing. It's kind of a natural athleticism just because what was there.
Right. I think, and you still do it today, so those that know that you're always out with the dogs, or you're still climbing. You'll go meet your daughter, and I think that that just shows just what it is when you're outdoors and you're doing athletic things instead of being cooped up in the house like most kids are today. So that's always been something I've watched from afar on how you deal with your children that way, and the athletes that they all became. So that's been fun to watch. So let's talk about the question keeps getting brought up because you put it in the. So I got like 3 DMs.
I know where this is going.
I'm like, oh man. I said I'll let him tell the story. I got like 3 DMs after you shared it on Facebook. Like, what is he talking about? The black eyes? And I said, yeah, I'll let him tell the story about his black eyes and the pictures in there. But so let's go ahead and answer that question that's been asked 3 or 4 times of me now.
Well, it's always a funny story to me because all the first pictures of Sarah have me in the picture with 2 black eyes, right? And they're like, what? What happened to you? And I was like, that was just me, some love taps from Mark Cox. So we were training at the studio, and I've always loved being in the ring or being on the mat. Never had a problem tangling. And so I remember this day we were all sparring, and I was sparring with Bo right before you. And it was funny because, I think he wanted to be a little bit fancy. He tried a flying, like, scissor kick, right? Wanted to take me down that way. But I kind of thought he's going to pull this on me. So when he did, I was able to kind of jump forward, defend it, and, got on top of him, gave a couple hits there. And whatever, and you go, all right, let's, that ended. And then you go, all right, let's you and I go. And look, I felt pretty good standing up. I mean, I don't have the hands I should. I always say that I've relied on my legs way too much my entire martial arts career, right? Got a good side kick, good back kick, and I can keep people away from me. It's a great tool. And so we were kind of going back and forth with that. But as it happens, and it always happens, the weakness in my game is my ground game, and that's definitely not your weakness. So we got tangled up, and I'm like just going, I got to get out of this some way, and I'm trying to get away. And we ended up going to the ground, and you were able to. I just had to cover up at some. Trying to get away was the worst thing because that just opened me up. I'm like, bam, okay, we're just gonna pull one of these.
Yeah,
So-
I remember that. And people, that was a long time ago too. I mean, how old is Sarah now?
She is 22. So yeah, this is 22 years ago. 22 years ago.
Yeah, I remember too, man. I was that was me more in my prime back in the day. You know what I mean? I'm 60 now, so I'd have been in late 30s and the early 40s, and when I was really banging.
It sucked. It sucked.
I remember you know that it's funny that when people ask about it, and I said, he didn't start with me, and so a lot of times, you have a different respect for your instructor that you start with, and when you come from a different place, it's not that you don't have a respect. It's just that you just don't know. You don't know the instructor well. You don't know. And then it escalates to whatever it is. Because I think you started your martial arts elsewhere. What?
I was at the Vito Falco Taekwondo Academy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why and we talked about that quite a bit because he was a great guy. Vito is a really good dude.
Yeah.
And but we spoke a lot about you do a lot of kicking, and you always keep your hands down. That's why you get punched in the face and you have black eyes. And so we that was a long time ago. Those are fun memories. And then of course, all your pictures have black eyes in them, and so when you put it out there, everybody's like, what is he talking about? And I said, I'll let him tell the story. And I said, just back in the day, I mean, I tell people, there's a blood and guts era of martial arts, and it was like that. Little knuckle punches on and rock and rolling, and it just was just what we did.
I enjoyed it. I will tell you, the guy that got me into martial arts, he's on, I don't know if you've met him personally, Mike Martinez. He was a brutal fighter. And he got me into martial arts like 15, 16 years old. He kept seeing me getting beat up. I won't go into any detail on that, but he's like, look, why don't you come here to the studio? And it was kind of, martial arts was well suited for me because once again, it was one of those individual things. I was really, I could walk on my hands. I could do a zillion push-ups, pull-ups. I was really good at all that, just individual physicality kind of stuff. And martial arts gave me a place where I could just sit there and kind of channel that. And then in our studio, we sparred. Our biggest challenge in going to tournaments was getting dinged for excessive contact. And it's not that we were trying to fight dirty. It's we trained like you were in the rink. We trained like you were striking people,
Right.
And you get those people that, they kind of do this retreating back fist. They hit you in the stomach and they get a point. You're going, come on now. So the next time that happens, you just come down, clock, and then it's then excessive contact, and it's the name of the game. I get it, but so I really appreciate that. But Mike was the one that he'd point the same thing out where I'd be like this, and he's like, every time you're throwing that kick, you're dropping this hand. I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you. And he tagged me a few times. One time with the spinning heel kick, and just kind of, I just done.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Judy said you can also ride a unicycle. That's what she just.
I can actually, ride a unicycle, juggle. Look, once again, all the individual things. Rather than get good grades, I made a determination in middle school. I said, well, I could get good grades, or I could learn all these tricks, and maybe girls will like that. And as it turned out, I didn't get the attention of girls either way. So, or maybe I didn't know because I was too terrified of them, but.
Yeah, well, that's probably more like it back in those days. Let's talk about your music real quick, because I think that I want to talk about what you do on the songwriting side, and you took something, I think that was, you just took it to the next level, and why you decided to go out for songwriters, because it's a natural thing, by the way. I think that, martial arts and music, it's funny that, a lot of martial artists are musicians. I don't know if you know that or not.
Sure.
I don't know if it's... just one of those things that they all do. I've played guitar for a while. I picked up the saxophone, and all my kids are musically inclined also. And then you took this hobby, and I think you took it to another level. I mean, you've been playing guitar and then songwriting. Let's talk about how that all happens and what you've done now with the songwriting, and how you have what you've done with that.
Sure. Well, I started playing music. My dad was a banjo player, and we were in the house in Chatsworth, right there on Hiawatha off San Jose, right there by the studio, that house where my brother used to live. And I was sitting up, I just remember being, I don't know, maybe I was 7, 8 years old, and my dad was recording Blowing in the Wind on his banjo, just on a cassette recorder, not even 4-track, just simple cassette. And my dad had this big, low, booming voice, and, basic banjo player, not an amazing technical banjo player, but he good rhythm, and I just loved that recording. So I took it, and I'd wear that. I wish I could find these tapes, right? These cassettes,
right. Yeah.
And so I knew I wanted to do that, and one day I said, I played a little piano. I knew to read music, and my dad said, I want to play guitar, and he pointed out a guitar and said, well, pick that up. There's a book. So understand, and we've talked about this. My parents were not like the big kind of like, you can do it. They were more like, well, if you want to do it, go do it. We won't stop you, and then if you prove that you wanted to do it, they would come alongside and more directly support you. But they weren't going to just throw resources at you if you decided you wanted to do something. You had to prove something, which I appreciate. And so anyway, so I started writing songs right away, but it was intermittent here and there. I wrote a few good things over the years that people would say, man, this song should be on the radio. This is a great tune. And then in 2006, about that time frame, I wrote a song that really got some notice in Arizona. We lived in Arizona at the time. And I went out to play at this open mic at this place called Cave Creek Coffee Company that was one of the best places for original music in Arizona. And right away, like, the guy that owned the place said, hey, I want to hire you to play the wine bar. And it was a paid gig, and I was like, how'd that happen? So it was really cool. And so since then, I've really spent the last year working on my recording and production because it's COVID, nobody's playing out. So I said, all right, I'm gonna take that time and really jump into something that I've always kind of pushed back on, was the mechanical element of recording. I didn't really like recording myself. Now I've come to really enjoy it. So that's kind of where it's going. We're starting to play back out again. I've got just picked up a bass player, got a good guitar player for my band, and we're hoping to do some stuff over this next year.
So now I remember early on, I think I did a t-shirt for you at one point way back in the time, right? When you were first starting things. And
yeah.
So what is the songwriter? Do you not have, a website or something that where other songwriters get together? What is that you've put together for that?
Well, what I had for a while, it's not really active right now, although I have a list of. I used to have something called the Songwriter Online, where I just taught technology and kind of strategy for songwriters. And really, it wasn't because I'd attained some monstrous level of success. What it was is that I've done, a fair amount with both writing my books, with the technology, with creating kind of a following there. And in 2009, I was playing this music. I'd been hired to play at the wine bar. I had opened for a couple national acts, and I'd gotten people that gave me their mailing address, wanted to know when I was playing. And I sat down, it really was at the start of the year, and I said, if I was consulting myself, because I do consulting, I tell people, here's what you might want to do, here's content, we've talked about it, content you could do to encourage people to come to the studio, whatever. And I realized I wasn't doing any of those things. So the phrase I would say all the time is, take my advice, I'm not using it, right? Which is really stupid.
That's funny.
It's become a phrase, but actually somebody called me on it and said, it's kind of stupid. Why don't you use your advice, which I still have to kind of jump into from time to time and struggle with. So what I did is I immediately sat down and I wrote I call it a business plan, but it was 4 pages, just a simple list of things I should be doing if I want to do something more with my music. And, then I took that list and I pared it down to 3 things. And that was merchandise, the shirts you made. Let's see, I wanted merchandise, something I could leave them musically, like a CD or something, and creating a list of venues. And so that's what I started with. A mailing list. So I guess it was 4 items, whatever. What happened was I show up at this open mic, and a bunch of people showed up to watch me play, and these guys who are, one guy, Jim Pipkin, he's an amazing songwriter, and he's won like Folk Alley Artist of the Year, great storyteller, and he's like, how are you doing all this stuff? And I said, well, here, let me show you. And I helped him get his mailing list together and his website and some other technology. And then another person said, hey, can you teach me this? And then the Arizona Songwriters Association contacted me and said, can you do this workshop for us? And so I did a workshop. And suddenly I kind of became the social media technology guy for all these artists. And that's really how I started the Songwriter Online. There's no money in it. Artists have no money,
Right. And that's true.
They're the worst clients in the world. I don't want them as clients. I always say, I don't want them as clients. I can't afford me. God knows you can't. So,
isn't it something that sometimes our passion will lead to money at some point, or sometimes our passion just leads to the passion of what it is. And and I know that music is a hard gig. I've watched my own children do this. My Gabriel had a band, and he was even at the Whiskey one time, and watching what these kids go through and how they take advantage of young, making them go sell tickets for their venue only so they have the opportunity to play. And I told them, they're so young. I said, do you have any idea how reamed you guys are getting?
Yeah, right. Well, what's funny is my band won't do pay to play. We never did. Right away, I saw that gig, and it's funny that you mentioned that because I've done some videos on it. There's a guy, they probably talked to him. I don't know if he's still out there around LA. His name was T-Roy. That was the name he went by. And he worked for the Dakota Lounge and the Mint. I tell people, don't play any of those venues. If you don't have a following, what ends up happening, and this is the cycle, and I'm sure that Gabriel saw this. You go out and they go, okay, yeah, we can get you a slot on a Wednesday night at 9:45 in Hollywood. There's no parking, right? I won't even go to Hollywood on a Wednesday night, right? Even if I'm playing, I don't want to show up, right? And so what you do, you don't have a following, but you want so badly to play these places because they're the places you read about in the past, the Whiskey and, whatever it was, right? So you think that's what you need to do. And so this guy says, T-Roy or whoever, he calls himself a promoter, but he's not a promoter. He's not promoting your show. He's a scheduler. He's a secretary. That's all he is, right? And he says, play this gig, and you got to guarantee 20 tickets sold. We take those first 20, but you get everyone after that. So basically $200. And what happens is they sell them or they give away these tickets to family and friends because they don't have a following. And I tell people all the time, family and friends are not fans. I'm sorry. They watched you growing up. They've heard all your songs. They've like,
Right.
whatever. And that's cool. Like, I get it. But so what they do is they go, they invite them, and maybe the first time everybody comes out because they want to support them. You want to support people in the arts, right? And I'm really gonna have to work on my lighting situation. I look so green or something. But anyways, so you invite them all out. They all show up, and you're like, okay, it's kind of a successful gig. It feels good. You had people there. You played. They clapped. It felt great. But then you book another gig 2 months later, and now maybe your mom shows up, and maybe one of your friends, and now you're on the hook for $180, and nobody's really there, and you're like, this, it's so defeating, right?
Correct.
And
Yep.
so what I tell bands to do, and this is kind of one of the things I started doing, is first of all, when you're playing original music, don't play long sets. People are being introduced to brand new music. Don't expect them to sit there for an hour and love every song. Even if your songs are great, there's a limit to new music acceptance, and that's totally cool as well. So you have to understand that. And so what I tell people is you'd be better off finding one or two other acts, and go, hey, let's go play for an hour and a half at this venue together, and we'll go to the venue. It doesn't have to be it could be any restaurant. It could be a karate studio. It doesn't have to be what you think is traditionally a venue. It doesn't have to be those places. And you go out and you say, okay, rather than us playing $200 tickets, because you might have to pay something for promotion, maybe the 2 acts or the 3 acts say, hey, let's set a budget, let's create some flyers, let's run some ads on Facebook. And the most important thing, and I tell the acts this all the time, is promote the other guys, don't promote you. So come out there and say, oh my God, we're so excited, we're playing this show, and we've played with a band called The Fallen Stars and another band called Jed's Dead. They're really good bands, and I always want really good acts. Like, if they're better than us, even better. I'm not threatened by it. That just pushes us to be better. And so I'll just say, oh my God, you got to come see these guys. They're amazing. And then on their side, the Fallen Stars are going, oh man, we get a chance to play with Matt Moran. You got to check out this guy's songwriting. And what that does is it gets their listeners and their list excited about some new music in a way that isn't just me going, come see me, I'm awesome. Hey, I know I'm awesome, but come see,
Yeah, right.
people are going to get sick of hearing it, right? So that's what I tell bands to do is find your own venue. Do it at a rec center. Do it find a place where you don't have to pay anything, and don't make it 9:45 on a Wednesday night in Hollywood with no parking. Make it at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday or on a Friday at this restaurant. Hey, we're just playing for 30, 40 minutes. Would love to have you come out.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned the studio. That's what I did for my son. So I'd let him play here, and he'd have his different bands, and and then I'd be able to, kind of be the bouncer up front, and it was a place for these young guys and these young bands to come and play their music and not have to come up with a bunch of money and stuff. So that's that. I did that for my own son too. So I remember doing all that stuff for him. So. Well, let's get into, we're already 30 minutes in, so I want to talk a little bit more about, I think that you have a real compelling story on addiction with your son, with Chris, who is with me also. We have chewed the same dirt with your boy, and I want to talk a little bit about, as a father and what you've seen. Also, I really want to get into the real talk of what that looks like when you went to the streets and found him, because I did that too. I went to where Chris was living on the streets, and I mean it was a shithole, to say that. I was beyond shocked as far as that goes. But how long have you guys been dealing with the addiction part of it?
Well, so and now I've written about this quite a bit, and I'm gonna work on not getting emotional because we're in the middle of that right now. But and I mentioned before we got on, I'm feeling pretty good about things, but feeling pretty good about things is a day to day kind of thing, right? So the first thing is Christopher has struggled with some sort of drug related abuse since he was probably 13 or 14 years old. And wasn't that it was hard drugs or anything. It was that regardless of what it was, things fell apart for him. He just wasn't able to kind of keep things together regardless. But it really ramped up. And I think you're aware of this. I mean, he was kicked out of 3 different high schools. And the thing is, and I think you could, testify to this, is he's a nice kid, like when he's a nice kid, right? Like he's not the angry youth, sullen, against the corner, just like doesn't like adults. He's always been very personable. Everybody likes him, right? But he has this demon, this challenge that he can't get past. And so about 2018, well, you and I worked like crazy. We got him into the military, and
Right. Yeah. We sure did.
that took us doing a little bit of work. We had to go to the courthouse, and there's a whole bunch of things. And he had a good year and a half in there, and then he started to have some challenges there. He was out in Korea, and he and a certain friend, who, by the way, this guy's doing really good now and is trying to press Chris to get things together. But they had some challenges, and he came back to Fort Hood. Then he got in trouble there, and then ultimately was thankfully let go with a general discharge under honorable conditions.
Right. Yes, he wasn't dishonorably discharged.
He wasn't dishonorably discharged, and that has been, he has his resources through the VA, which I don't know what we would have done without that. It's been remarkable. They're an amazing medical team, and just their social worker, everything. I can't say enough about the VA in LA. And but so he came back from the military. You took him in. I think it was the second time you had taken him in, and then had the incident where he stole from you. And that challenge kicked off a few other things that, for a while it seemed like he was going to get it back together. And then suddenly he tried, and he's told me about the first time he tried it, he tried fentanyl. And fentanyl is, it's something else, because when it seems to get a hold of people, it doesn't seem like it lets go. So Christopher disappeared from my life end of 2018, and I didn't know where he was. And when you're dealing with an addict, you go back and forth between this, I got to live my life and do things, and oh my God, where is my kid? And it's kind of this back and forth, because I have other kids too, and you're trying to, I'm parenting Sarah, she's living with me, we're in LA, and so there's limited resources and time for me to go find him. But eventually I started making a concerted effort to go find him, and just started visiting homeless communities around the city, which, it's very strange to walk up to somebody with your phone. And I remember the first time it happened, it was in Koreatown. I walk up to this guy, he's living in a tent in a, like a Staples parking lot in the corner with his girlfriend or something, middle-aged African-American man. And I walk up and I say, hey, have you seen him? Have you said, this is my son. I'm looking for my son. I just have my phone. I'm literally walking around with a picture, And he goes, oh, yeah, I know him. And him saying that, my heart dropped. Although I was excited, like, oh, he's seen him. But I'm going, wow, you walk up to this guy was using drugs while I walked up to him. And you're going, I just walked up to a homeless drug addict, and he knows my son. Like, that's weird. And so he said, go by MacArthur Park, the Yoshinoya, he's using fentanyl, right? And I go, I don't really know. And he goes, yeah, that's where the fentanyl users go. So it's a weird community, and it is a community, as weird as it sounds, but these people know kind of some of their movements, of people that are around there. So he had seen them, and he said to me, and you'll get a kick out of this, as grim as the story is. He said, "Oh, yeah, he talks a lot," and I go, "Oh yeah, that's my son."
Yeah.
Which I understand the source of that. I can't deny that has been the knock on me for a long time. So, and I'll always remember we went. So I'm out looking for him, and I'm talking to all these addicts, and I just got very comfortable with sticking my head into a tent and going, "Anybody seen this guy? Anybody seen this guy?" I didn't care. So I've talked to drug dealers and gang members and the police out there and the the aid workers, and eventually, I ran into a guy said, "Look for him up at Vermont and Beverly." And the really funny story is, not funny, but I'm outside of it was a Jack in the Box right by MacArthur Park. And two guys are coming out, and one guy looks like he's new on the streets, but there's a look. I could tell these guys are both from the street. The second guy, he's got tattoos all over him and piercings and just kind of, wild looking. And but they're walking together. The first guy's a little bit in front of him. I go, "Hey, have you seen this guy? It's my son." And the first guy's kind of looking. He's kind of shaking his head no. And the guy behind him, the guy with all the tattoos, I see him going, "Yeah." And I go, "I'm just his dad. He's not in trouble. I just want to know where he is." And the guy goes, "Go to Vermont and Beverly. He's somewhere around there. That's where he is." And I go, "Okay." And then the first guy goes, "Man, that's really cool that you're looking for him. Nobody ever comes out, to look for us out here. They don't care or whatever." And the second guy, the guy that's all tatted up, goes, and this was just a remarkable, kind of like, I almost had respect for him in the sense that he just kind of owned it. He said, "That's bullshit. We're here because we choose to be." And he goes, "Your son's a nice kid, and I hope you find him." I was like, "Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I appreciate the candor." And so we did find Chris, and true to form, on the street, these girls that we walked up, they go, "Oh, I know him. I'll go get him." And she runs off, and the other girl's talking to me, young lady, is going, "Oh my gosh, he talks about you guys all the time. You really did a good job raising him." And yeah, exactly. I'm on the streets in this homeless community going, it seems like if that was true, we wouldn't be here, because no matter, right? And I told you the story. One of them said, the same girl actually, she goes, "You guys are like the Leave It to Beaver family." And I was like, what episode was Beav behind the McDonald's shooting up heroin? I didn't see that episode. So,
it's, I guess, when you look at it from their perspective, is there's no denying that Chris is one of these respectful kids. You know what I mean? That you can't. It's hard to not like the kid when you're around him for a while, and when he does things wrong, he's super apologetic, and he just can't seem to get past his own demons. You know what I mean? And then, so, yeah, that was a little bit rough when he was here. I've always liked him. I've done this not just for Chris. I've done this a couple times, and I got to be honest, Matt. There's not one time that it's gone good. So I don't know what that is kind of a breath of fresh air when you say the one guy goes, that's bullshit. We are out here on our own accord. And I think that you bring a perspective because it's your son, number one. I mean, you and I have had some tear dripping phone calls on what's up. And I've always been in the background wondering, how is this kid doing? You know what I mean? Because I know what he thinks about me is he looks for that, that acceptance from me and stuff like that. So it's really hard from my perspective on that. I can't imagine what it is from a father's perspective and how you have to go to sleep. I've never gone to sleep and wondered what my kid is doing on the street. You know what I mean? I'm not sure how sometimes you do sleep unless you have to just put it to the side to try and get some sleep. You know what I mean? So I mean, I really would probably be just like what you're doing out on the street. Isn't it funny? We have no fear when we're going after the ones we love. You know what I mean? I mean, I would have zero fear, just like you did. When I went to the street to see Chris, how they live, you know, when I saw them and how they live, and the weird thing is, it's kind of, I don't know, it's like for lack of a better term, it's like a family out there with them. You know, now of course their family, they rip off each other. You know, they'll rat each other out. They'll steal things from each other. It's the most dysfunctional thing I've ever seen, ever. You know what I mean? And I don't know, you being out there, you know, you're a little more advocate out there for the homeless. Do you feel that they're, well, obviously LA isn't doing anything right, right? What do you feel is something that would make a change out there?
Well, you know, I kind of have, I guess, maybe they're radical ideas. I don't think they are. But my oldest son, so Matt, he worked with a homeless group out in Chicago. And he and his older sister have several different times gotten Chris into rehab. They took him out to Arizona. So they've been in the fight too. And I mean, Matt and Chris got into a physical altercation, and Matt found out that, wrestling really helps Chris, right? Like, damn it, you know. Chris is a big, strong kid. So, there's a few things. He turned me on to a book called Chasing the Scream by a guy named Johan Hari, and if anybody wants to look up Johan Hari. Hari is Hari, but either way, his book called Chasing the Scream. He has a great TED Talk called Everything We Know About Addiction is Wrong. And I think it's worth looking at. And it really got me thinking, because he said, Dad, you know, you've tried the yelling, you've tried the shame, you've tried, you know, forcing him, you know, and none of those things matter because he's going to make his own decision. But what you have to understand is there's a community out there on the street. He's part of this community. He has a family. And you're right, it's a dysfunctional family. But by the same token, they do look out for each other. The number of times, you know, it's gotten to where they know me out there, but I could tell they were lying to me. Oh, we haven't seen him. We have, you know, and they carry Narcan around. So if somebody overdoses, they literally bring these people back to life on the street. These addicts are all carrying Narcan so they could bring their friend back to life if he overdoses, right? And so that's very dysfunctional, and yet somehow there's a community there. They get food. You know, it's a whole thing. And what Matt said is, Dad, why don't you go out there and just find out what he's up to? Just talk to him like he's a person, and you know, rather than try and fix him. And that's hard. That's a really hard shift to make as a dad, right? You know, you want to beg him, grab him, kidnap him. I told you once years ago, I go, man, if I could kidnap him and I had the resources, I'd just put him in a room for the next 5 years and get his head straight, you know. Just not an option. So I went out there and I just said, that was the first thing and then this is the other thing I saw that when I was out there, is there are some good resource organizations, but they're operating almost in silos. So they don't know what the other is doing. And a lot of people view this as a law enforcement thing. Oh, there's a bunch of homeless here with tents. We hate that, and I get it. It frustrates me. So let's get the police involved. But then the police, they don't have the resources to deal with that. Like they're both not equipped from a training standpoint. They're meant to go out there and, you know, protect and serve from a criminal activity standpoint. And while, yeah, doing drugs is a criminal activity, they're over in some tent. It's like, is that where... What are we going to do? Like, we're just shifting their location to a new place. That's not really solving it. And so there are places that have done better jobs. And, you know, I believe we have a failed war on drugs, and it's caused all kinds of problems. And we had the same problem with alcohol. Prohibition didn't work. It created crime. And so my radical idea is, well, look, fentanyl's cheap. Drugs are actually cheap. They cost almost nothing. If you want to get rid of gang activity, give the drugs away for free, but do this. It's at this location where it's clean, where they have to, right? And then sit there and go, you know, look, if you want to make $20 today, all you have to do is spend an hour and a half cleaning this one little strip of street. Now, you're not going to get, maybe you get 50% of the people that are willing to do that. Just go out there and fill up a trash bag and the city can pick up those trash bags, right? Because there's all this trash. But you might get somebody who wants to earn $20 every few days. And what that does long term is maybe it gives them some sense that they can take care of their environment. And it's not going to be a perfect solution, but right now there's a whole underground economy. If you've been to MacArthur Park, there's all these street vendors. All those street vendors get their product from drug addicts who are stealing them from CVS, from, Target, from... That's what these addicts do. They go out and they steal these items. That's what Chris was doing. I'd go, and he was very open. I'd go out there and I'd go, hey, have you seen Chris? They go, oh, I think he's out boosting. Boosting is going out and stealing from CVS. He'd pay a security guard $20. I'm going to go get some female products because they get more money. They're worth more. He'd steal those items. He'd sell them to a vendor on the street. He gets money to go get drugs, right? We can do away with that economy. And so right now the problem is, it requires hiring a security guard at CVS, at Target, at this place. We're hiring all these extra people. It requires extra resources from a police standpoint. And so, yeah, it sounds crazy to go, well, maybe if we just provided a place where they could do drugs without having to pay for them and do them cleanly, and also offer a way that they could make a little extra money, maybe a little bit of respect and kind of ownership gets built into that. You're not going to solve every problem, but it seems like we could do away with that underground economy and take kind of the gangs out of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you get a lot of pushback on that?
Oh, and I get it. I grew up in the same era. We have a very kind of moralistic view of dealing with drugs, right? But places like Vancouver and Portugal, and once again, it's not a panacea. It doesn't solve everything. But these other places have done better jobs on dealing with addicts and homelessness. They just have. And people, they want to push it to, nobody wants to make that move because no politician, the guy who did it in Vancouver, he lost his... he was the mayor, and he was actually much more on the side on the war on drugs, but he kept having these people showed up. You can read about it in Hari's book, but people kept showing up to his events and saying, look, another person died on the street. We could solve this. And it was all the homeless who were doing it. There was this advocate out there. And then this young woman who had been at those meetings wasn't there one day, and the mayor knew her. She had talked to him several times, said, where is she? And the guy said, she overdosed last week. And the mayor goes, I got to change what I'm doing. Now, he ultimately lost the next election because, he's easy on drugs. That's kind of the knock. And that's the price that gets paid. But to this day, he goes, look, I believe what we did was right. It's working. And so if I had to lose my political career to make that one right move, then I think it was the right thing.
Yeah. Well, I think that, that's whatever idea we have right now is right. I think you are spot on as far as law enforcement is not, we enforce laws. We're not supposed to be psychiatrists on the street and dealing with it. We're supposed to be putting you in handcuffs if you're dealing drugs. That's what we're supposed to be doing. So, but if we don't do that, then you get it to where the police just, now you got the other side of it where you can steal stuff and there's no really repercussions of it anymore. So it just opens. And then listen to you say that they'll pay a security guard off just so they can do it. I mean, it's just
right. And it's funny. I told you the story, and I'm happy to share this because I've been very open about it with law enforcement too. The first time so what happened with Chris? Just the short summary, and this is very common on the streets. He's doing IV drug use on the streets, and Chris has no sense of self-care. Usually women do better. They just take care of themselves a little bit better. But so Chris developed a skin infection, cellulitis, and that skin infection, ultimately, he got an abscess. He went to the hospital. He starts getting antibiotics. They say you got to stay here for another day, but he's dope sick. He wants drugs, so he leaves against medical advice, right? The number of times they said, he left AMA because he'd call me. I'm at Hollywood Presbyterian. Okay. Let me know what happens. Then I'd call back and they'd be like, he left last night, AMA. I mean, he's literally walked out of hospitals with just pulling IVs out of his arms and just walking out, right? Gonna go get drugs. So the infection ultimately got into his blood, became septicemia, which is basically a step away from sepsis. It lodged in his back and destroyed a couple vertebrae and a disc. They had to have a radical back surgery. He was clean for 6 months after that and doing pretty well. You visited him during that time. Mm-hmm. Then he relapsed and went back on the streets, even though they told him the infection's going to come back and it will attack that prior surgery. That repeated. He ended up calling me one day, and he's on the streets, paralyzed from the waist down. And so I drive out and I get him to the VA hospital. And they have to do another back surgery. And now, and so this is the story I was going to tell, though. So understand where he's at now is the infection came back after his last time, attacked his heart. He's going to have a valve replacement. It's pretty intense. He stroked on the 22nd. I'm saying this, by the way, Chris has given me permission to talk about it. So we've talked about this, but he's pretty open about it, as you know. Sometimes in a way that is not, I don't want to hear these stories.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
But he'll tell you. So, so that's kind of where things are with him right now. But I'll tell this one story, and it's just kind of my approach, and it was an interesting conversation. I'm not going to say where he was at the time because I don't want anybody to get in trouble. But he was in the hospital, and he was threatening to leave, and they call me. And they say he's threatening to leave, and I had already told them if he threatens to leave, have a note in there, tell them to call me. So I get on the phone with him. I go, Chris, don't fucking leave. Don't leave. And he goes, Dad, I need fentanyl. I go, fine, I'll go get you fentanyl. Okay? So now this is the second time I've bought fentanyl on the street, which of course I picture myself getting arrested for this. Everybody thinks I'm a cop on the street. That's a big problem. So
well, you look more like from the Breaking Bad.
Yeah,
you
Mike.
Look like him, Mike. Yeah. So.
Exactly. The number of times I've been in the hospital, and one time I'm there, and I'm angry because Chris is in there and he's sick, and I'm worried. And these nurses walk out and she goes, oh, you're a cop, I can tell. And I go, nope, I'm not. I'm a musician. I'm just pissed. So I go back out on the street. Well, the first time we did it, he wouldn't go. He knew he had to be at the hospital, and his mom and I were there. He was very sick. And the paramedics had showed up, and he wouldn't get in the ambulance. And then the police showed up. And Chris goes, I'll go if I can take a hit, if I can get fentanyl. I go, okay, fine. And I went around the corner. I told the cops, I go, I'll be right back. I went over, I bought fentanyl, and I told the police, I go, I'm going to dose him right now. I'm going to let him dose himself, and then we're going to get him out of here. And the police said, whatever, just do it. So the next time I go out on the street, I'm looking for East Coast. That was the drug dealer's name. And so here I am walking down the street. I know where the guy is, kind of. I go, hey, I'm looking for East Coast. And this guy's like, I don't know who the fuck you're talking about. And someone told me this is the guy, and I'm going, man, I'm Christopher's dad. You called him Bigfoot or OD Chris, and he goes, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm frustrated. And all of a sudden I hear this, honey, what are you doing out here? And there's Tasha, who's a African-American transvestite who was friends with Chris, who I'd met, right? I'm telling you couldn't make a story of this, right? I'll write this in a book. If you put it in a movie, people would go, this is so unrealistic, right? But I had several conversations with Tasha, and I like her. She's cool. So she goes, what are you doing here? And I go, Chris is in the hospital. I need to get him fentanyl or he's going to leave. And East Coast, I'm looking for East Coast. And she goes, honey, you are too loud and you look like a cop. You come to me, I'll take care of you. And so she ended up scoring my fentanyl for me, and I brought it over and I called the doctor. I said, why don't you guys just give him a low dose of fentanyl? The infection's the problem, not the addiction. You're not solving the addiction. Let's just cure the pressing medical condition. We'll deal with addiction later. And the doctor said, I agree with you, but our hands are tied. We can't do it. And I go, okay, I'm going to get fentanyl. I'm going to sneak it into your hospital, and I'm going to dose him. And the doctor says, I 100% agree with what you're saying. I agree with your approach, but I can't have you do that. So I'll send him downstairs on a cigarette break when you get here. And that's what he did. Now, and look, I view that doctor as making a sound decision based on the pressing, because what happens is if they don't get treatment, if an addict goes into the hospital and he leaves a day later, he now is out there with the infection, creating a antibiotic resistant strain of that infection. Like there's multiple issues there, right? It's not just this one addict's made a bad choice and maybe he dies. It's other people are going to have that same infection. It's going to be rampant on the street, and that's kind of what happened. And so that's kind of informed my different approach, and that's why I went out and bought fentanyl. Not anything I thought I'd be doing.
Right. Well, and it's so listening to the story, right, where the police are giving you the nod, the doctors are giving you the nod. It's obvious that they've seen enough that if you got it from the doctor's perspective, I can see them wanting to treat the not the addiction. They want to make sure that they're preserving life. You know what I mean?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so I can kind of see that from that standpoint. So I
and I think from the police perspective, it's okay. We could arrest a guy for this, but he's just going to loop through the system and be back out because we're not putting away some hardened criminal. We're putting away a very sick person, right? Christopher at that point could hardly stand, and it's like all it is a bunch of paperwork for them, and it's not getting actual bad guys off the street.
That's correct. Well, why don't you let everybody know how old Chris is, how old we're talking about?
Christopher is 28 years old, just turned 28.
Right, still in his 20s. And, he was a strapping dude, too. And this is a phenomenal kid with phenomenal genetics and strength. And
unknowingly so. You and I would talk about it. He'd lift weights for like 30 seconds or 30 minutes. He'd do like 5 days of working out, and he'd just be like shredded. And I'm going, I can't do that no matter what I do.
Right. Yes. He just had these phenomenal genetics, and then to see him reduce down, and it's taxing. It's taxing on me because I'm close to that kid, and what it's like to be his dad and mom. I mean, you and I have come from a divorce situation, so, but divorce or not, you still have this child together, correct? And so
yeah, she saved his life on 2 specific occasions. Saved his life when I had given up.
Yes, and I know that we've had those conversations, you and I, on what that looks like. And is there any resource, Matt, when people are watching this and stuff like that, is there any resource that you went to help you deal with that, or is it just reading books and talking to other people that have children that are in it, or have you not really dealt with that yourself? What's the real?
Well, the first thing is my older kids, or all the kids, have been amazing, right? They really rally around me and make sure my mental health is, and my sister as well. I think the story. I found my brother dead in March of last year. Last year, he died of alcoholism. So, that was tough. And so I've had a lot of hits this last year. I'm a pretty optimistic person, but I was like, holy cow, this year has been rough. But I will say that Johan Hari's book, from a standpoint of understanding addiction, some Al-Anon, and then I've reached out to a few. I got therapy for a while. It just kind of, like you mentioned it, I don't sleep a lot as it is. I'm up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning every day, 365 days a year, and I like it. I love mornings. But, it was more like waking up panicked at 1 going, I think I talked to you once when I couldn't find Chris, and I was literally weeping going, my little boy is dead, my little boy is dead. You're losing your frickin' mind. And so I've had some of those nights. What I've learned, I will tell you, is I try not to fight it anymore. Like, I try not to lay in bed. I just get up and I go, okay, let's read something. Let's play some music. Let's do something to break, and then try and go back to bed and do the best we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's good. I think that we've, I've had a special place for him all the time. And just for those that know that are listening, regardless of what anybody says, he still put the uniform on. You know what I mean? And he ran into problems in Korea, but he still stood. He still stood with arms to protect the United States. So, that always goes a long way with me. Like you can talk all the shit you want. He still stood guard to defend. And whether he made the wrong and right decisions in there, I understand that there's a lot of that issues in the military. It's not exclusive to Chris.
Sure.
And so I thought that the second half of this podcast would be about this, because I know that there's people out there that have run into the same situation that you have. And I don't know, maybe you can give some advice here. There is a community across the street from my school, and I watch them. They try and hide it as much as they can, when they're dealing, because I just don't. I can't deal. You think you look like a cop going out there? Oh my gosh. And so, I couldn't get anywhere when I went out there, right? And I'm like, man, maybe I need to change. Maybe I need to put different shirts on and put a baseball hat on or whatever. But it doesn't really matter because, they can smell them a mile away. But I find that these group of guys, there's a few guys over there that seem to be pretty normal. Now, you start putting the females in. Those females are radical, man. They start a lot of problems. And one was pregnant, and she's kind of mentally not there, and she gets in the street and she gets hit the other last month, right? And the car didn't kill her, but then all of a sudden, you have she lost her baby. Right now, she's back on the street, and she's just as crazy as she was before she got hit. And so I'm like, this is just such a vicious circle. I don't know if feeding them is great. I don't know if you get the city to come out and give them sandwiches, and and they get to have their little badge of I feel good today because I helped somebody. I don't really know what the answer is out there. I'm not a big fan of letting people get hungry. I'm not a big fan of seeing females on the street. You know what's happening to them out there and what they're doing to survive, and it's a vicious circle that I don't know. I don't know what you're feeling on that. What do you think when do we just go back to humanity and we help what we help? Because here's the thing. Even the pop-up pantries and all the stuff and feeding the people, and I like seeing when there's older people or people with children and they're struggling, they can't eat, and I think we should feed everybody. I mean, feeding people should not be an issue in the United States of America. That is for sure. And so you got like Freedom Church, it has pop-up pantries, and every Wednesday you see they come in. But then the same, you'll see the Mercedes, the Maseratis go through line to get food. It just. I can't deal with it. You know what I mean? So you helping those that help, but then you see the same people coming, taking showers and stuff, going 5-6 years, that don't really want to change that behavior. Mm-hmm. So, what is it they say out there? What is the percentage that somebody can come out of this?
Well, I hate to think of the percentages. That could make me sick, and I just you saying that, bringing up the percentages, literally almost brought me to tears. So, for fentanyl, it's something like under 2%. Okay, under 2%. Now there is another thing, and Johan Hari talks about this. My son posted some links up there. People should definitely check out that TED Talk. But in one way, we have to disconnect from the direct result we get in the immediate. Because if you look at that, you're going to be discouraged no matter what. And so Matt's admonishment to me, my oldest son, was just treat them like human beings. Just treat them like they're a fellow man and they've got a problem. Just, we see somebody who's got, let's just say, and I'm not making an equivalency, but let's just say somebody has, they're missing a leg, then we do accommodations to help that person. It's not about fairness or who gets equal. It's about this person needs this accommodation because of this issue, and we can try and build that up. Well, there's some other sickness with addiction. It's not what the mistake people make in the way it's portrayed is, they're just lazy and they're on the streets getting stuff for free. If you've been around that community enough times, it is such a stressful existence. It's not like we're kicking back partying. That's not the scene. The scene is, how can I get drugs? And I've got to do this, and I've got to be fearful of my stuff. They're carrying all their stuff with them. It's high. It's so stressful. And if we saw that and understood the humanity, we might go, wait a second, I just want to treat them like a human. And food isn't the biggest issue. There's food. We have food. They have access to resources for food. They can get showers. What Matt got me to understand is, and I could express my concerns, and even that when I talk to other addicts, I'm like, I don't really understand your life, but I'm not here to judge you. I'm just here to bring some socks. Foot health was a big thing, right? And I read about that after my son told me about it. It's like they don't take care of their feet. They keep the same socks on. They get wet. They get mold. They get, infection. So I just bought socks at the dollar store. I'd buy 30 at a time. And actually the dollar store gave me a discount after I told them what I was doing. I was getting like 30 pairs of socks for $15. And I just go out there with socks and just give out socks. Hey, who needs some free socks, and just talk to him. I talked to Tasha. I said, Tasha, what's your story? Did you ever have a dream of doing anything? This is the transvestite who got me my fentanyl, right? And I said, how'd you end up here? And Tasha said, look, I was in foster care from the time I was like 6 or 7. I was raped 3 times before I turned 18 years old. And my last family that abused me, hit me, whatever, said I was a discipline problem, and at 17 they dropped me off in Hollywood, and I've been here ever since. And so then I said, well, I'd asked, and Tasha goes, I kind of thought I'd like to design clothes. I used to think that. And I go, well, maybe you could do that. And Tasha goes, I don't even know how to get an ID.
Wow.
And so this, it's more, there's such a systemic thing that has to occur with education and coaching. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do have we have DPS, we have resources, right? But going through that system, okay, I got an appointment, and if you think it's hard enough for us to keep our appointments, drug addicts aren't real good at keeping appointments, right? And so, I don't really have a solution for all of that. There's so many things. But there's a whole systemic lack of training, lack of awareness. If you don't know these things exist, you don't even look at them. And so the biggest thing I tell people is, look, I understand not wanting them under the freeway overpass and in the dirt, but also, while you're trying to come up with a solution for that, look at more than just the solution of taking a bulldozer and pushing them away, going, what are the bigger issues going here, and what does humanity compel me to do? Can I just say hello to somebody and just have a conversation like they're a human being? And not do you want to get off the street? Okay, we might get there, but maybe I need to build trust first.
Interesting. Yeah, that's good. Your son wrote something here pretty good here. He says, Johan talks about how if being an addict becomes boring, i.e. offer free drugs and tea while in a medical office with smooth jazz playing, they tend to stop using in about 3 years. If they remain on the streets, they usually stop around 10-year mark if they live that long. They are often addicted to subculture, among other things. The substance isn't as addictive as we think. Interesting. Was obviously Matt has done some research on that, and I'm sure he's. I know that Chris talks about his brother quite often. So
Matt's been out there, and I'm sorry. He's been a big piece of this, and Chris really looks up to his brother. Mm-hmm. and his sister. And look, Jess came out, and I have a picture of Matt with Chris when he was before his first surgery, and Chris could hardly stand. And just Matt said, "Look, I'm just taking a picture with my brother." not a picture with somebody I need to fix. I want him to be better, but he's my brother now that he's an addict. He's not my brother when he gets better.
Uh-huh.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he's a good dude. He's a good man. So, yeah, I knew this was going to be a little on the tough side, but you know, I talk about real talk. I mean, this is some real shit. This is not I mean, I've lived this with you. So, I've been right in this fight with you
and I appreciate that. More than
You know.
you know, and I've mentioned it several times. You know, we know we've gotten into our little tiffs online, and you know, it's a wrong move for anybody to come and attack you. It's not allowed, right?
Yeah.
And I don't. Not that you need my help, but I've said this person has done above and beyond for my family. You know, and I appreciate that more than you know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we had some fun with.
I'm still a sarcastic asshole. Don't worry. I'm like.
Yeah, I can take it. You know, I got pretty thick skin. I you know, if I'm going to say something out there, I expect to get the repercussions. But yeah, this stuff has been important to me. You know, there's just something about that kid that, you know, I fight for him in the back. You know what I mean? Background, but at the same time, you know, I got tough love for him. You know, when I see him, I'd like to just wring his neck half the time. You know, it's like what right? This is what we want to do. We're like, what? How much more? How many more chances does God give you before you like, you know, you're going to go up there and see him. He's going to look at you and go, what is your deal? You know what I mean? And so, you know, let's see what happens on this next go around. We'll, you know, I always wait for you when it's time for me to make contact with him. When you think it's time, then I'll make the contact, because usually that gives him a little bit more strength if he knows Mr. Cox isn't, you know, upset with him, mad at him. It's just so past that anymore, being mad. It's just the, you know, I've told him before, I said, it's the disappointment that you give your dad that drives me crazy, bro. You know what I mean? I said, it's not even this. It's like, you don't see the other side of things like I do. And then, you know, you just, you know, take off. But we'll see what happens. I mean, you know, we'll see what this next go around is. I mean, this is pretty serious. You talked about that he's, you know, and those that know Chris, you know, he such a, you know, a strength and everything else, and to see him reduced to this off drugs and stuff like that. And I want to make sure everybody understands, this is coming from a family that was together. Okay, mom, dad, great family. I used to go over to we had life groups at your house and do all this kind of stuff. So it's not just this, you know, sad story of this. This is something that Chris took and that you have to deal with, you know, as a family. You guys done great. I mean, Matt's been great. I think that, you know, we're going to be pushing for him. We'll let people know from here, and I'll put up in comments on the stuff that your son put up for us to. These links. I think I'm going to do that today. I think I'm going to listen to this TED Talk while I'm kind of working in the background a little bit today and hear what he has to say. Because from my, you know, I mean, if I'm going to be real, man, like when we do the stuff at church, I have a hard time going to pop-up pantries and stuff like this, because I'm like, why do I keep seeing you guys here for 5 freaking years, man? Okay? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're, you ask yourself, am I helping you at all by just giving you all the stuff that you need or not? I think one of the best things I did see one thing that I did see that was very, to me, they had the housing people there and they had the courts were there. So you could take care of bench warrants and stuff like that right then and there at this thing. I really felt that was the best thing that I had ever seen really go down.
Well, I mentioned it. It's, look, the resources are there. Theoretically, there are resources. It's how do you marshal people who've got, I mean, there's plenty of mental illness, and we don't really have a solution for that yet. And then there's plenty of, like Matt said, the subculture and the environment of, you know, there's I hate to say it, but like a bad guy romancing of the idea of like, I'm this on the streets, I've got this gritty life. There's that subculture that Matt kind of mentioned. And yeah, his statistic on they get bored if it's not there. Once again, what you mentioned, what if some of those resources weren't, they have to go to a building, but, and so this is the challenge with politicians. There's a short-term cost for a longer-term benefit. And that's a really hard sell when you're running on a 2 to 4 year election cycle. Because if you sit there and go, okay, we're going to put some money here into taking care of these homeless communities, not just bulldozing them over because they're going to appear somewhere else, but going, we're going to hire some more people at DPSS and have them on the streets going to people. Okay, I'll be back here with your ID. We'll do the picture out here. Like these things could be done, but they do cost short-term money for potentially long-term benefit.
Yeah, interesting. Well, that was good, man. We've wrapped up. We're an hour and 15 in, and so I think that I'm looking forward to push this out to get other people to, because this is some real stuff, right? I mean, when you got to talk about, listen, I did what I had to do to keep my kid in there to get healed from sickness, including going out to the street myself. I'm sure when you first did it, you're like, I can't believe what I'm doing. And
I just pictured getting arrested and going, I'm gonna be calling my girlfriend. So I'm in the pokey.
Right, and that would be Murphy's Law. The addicts never get arrested, but the one trying to help somebody would get taken, right? So I don't know.
Yeah.
But that was good. I think that this will help out a lot. I think, you got such a diverse thing. I mean, we could talk for a long time. I mean, we could have done a whole thing just on the music part of it or your IT. And I think you have some other stuff. So, Matt, when I do this, I'll have people where they want to reach out to you because there's a lot of stuff you have. Just so you guys know, it's just, whether you got to listen to somebody that's actually going through addiction with his child, okay? And so, you don't get better resources than that. You can't, I hate talking to people. Or like when I lost weight, or somebody that's never had a weight problem telling me how to lose weight. It's just like, man, can I just punch you in the face or what? Just shut up. And
just don't eat and exercise, dude. It's easy.
That's right. That's right. And so I think that getting that resource also, you have a great resource. You've helped me tremendously. If people don't really understand even how Google stuff works and how you put out there that what's out there for free that you get to use and you don't utilize it. You've helped me with that over time too, on how to, I still use some of the stuff that you've done for me on, no, this is all free. This is how you store stuff. This is how people come in and how you've done that. So, a man of a lot of talents and a good friend for sure. And we do have fun on Facebook. I have more fun getting everybody all riled up than I do arguing with you.
Well, and the worst part about it is because Deb goes, you're a bully because you don't care if people call you an asshole. If they get mad at me, I just go, well, yeah, you're right. But anyways, back to this point, there's, yeah, I don't care. And so, you look, I told her the other day, I said, this guy's going to respond to something, and I'm not posting anything on Facebook right now. I'm worried about my music and my son. I've got plenty of stuff to do. But I said, I want to write back to this guy and say, you are entering the land of giants and you are ill-equipped for this adventure. Deb goes, you're such an arrogant asshole.
Isn't that what you call your song or something? Arrogant something?
Arrogant sage. And yeah, I have exactly. If they want to, and look, I wrote a thing called Addict Son, Addict Family, and I'm going to be doing more of that. I'm going to be working with Chris's mom. Maybe it will become a memoir. We think there's something in there. But, maybe it's a whole family publication because my whole point is, and this is for anybody who's dealing with addiction or whatever, or has it in their family. If you look for Addict Son, Addict Family, I think it's on LinkedIn, but I also have it on my Substack. Anyways, Mark will put the link up. I don't need to tell you about that. But reach out to me, and I'll point you at resources and, and kind of share what I know. I mean, I was approached by an addiction organization. I told them, mostly my story is going to be, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I try and see the humanity, and that's the best I can do.
Yeah, that's it, and that's really good advice. We forget about that quite often. I don't know. Me especially, because there's just a side of me that's like, man, pull your head out of your ass, bro.
I get it. No,
So,
Johan Hari will speak to that issue. They're frustrated. Addicts are frustrating. Addiction is frustrating. But okay, but by the same token, you struggled with weight for X amount of time, and there are people that were judgmental and just fix it, just do this, and you had to finally get to this point where you took it on yourself. That's very much what we should be trying to help addicts do.
Yeah. That's David Starachi is one of an old friend of mine. That's he's an old martial artist from Black Belt. This is David Starachi. Yes, Matt is local, by the way. If you want to ever talk to him, Dave, I can hook that up for you, no problem. And so that's good. I'm telling you right now, dude, we're going to end this broadcast with this. I'm telling you, one day I'm going to have Chris on this freaking show, and he is going to change lives based on what he did in his life. I tell him this every time I see him. The story that you can tell and the amount of people that you can change one day when you get your shit together is going to be awesome. You know what I mean? And I still feel that. I still feel that he's going to do that one day. I don't know when.
I would love that.
I don't know when, but I keep rooting for him. You know what
I
mean?
appreciate that.
All right.
I appreciate it so much.
It was a good time today. I'll talk
Thank
to you
you.
soon. All right.
See ya.
Bye-bye.